with me, Liz Worthing, where we talk about working sustainably in schools. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Wendy Litherland, who combines a role as Associate Assistant Head Teacher and Director of Sustainability at Accrington St Christopher's High School with being Head of Education at Solar for Schools. Those sounds like a full life. Thank you for making time for us, Wendy, and there's lots for us to talk about. I think where we want to focus today is around how leaders can go about building sustained engagement in climate action and making sure that their brilliant plans work out in practice. Now, Wendy, one of the things I've heard you speak about is the importance of engaging all of the relevant staff in your climate projects and plans. So do you want to start by sharing some of those experiences and lessons learned?
Oh, absolutely. I think we can probably go back nearly 20 years now. The beginning of my teaching career, a few years in, a bit of experience in a few different schools, and I arrived at St Christopher's full of enthusiasm and looking for something else to do to complement my science teaching. And the environment was always a passion of mine from various reasons, childhood and needs as well, needs and musts for different things. And our school certainly had a need to save money in school, so that helped there. So basically, it started off a little bit of a one-man band, or a one-woman band in this case, and things grew. And through that, from the bottom-up approach, I certainly learned a lot of lessons on the way, especially getting myself into issues where I kind of got myself into tight corners where I needed to get out of. I'd taken, some liberties I maybe shouldn't have taken. We've gone on trips abroad, all successfully and things like that. And I learned quite a few lessons with the children as well, which was good. We learned together, and many of those students are still in touch with me now and support a lot of the work we do, and are very good alumni of the school. Lots of lessons, and probably the main one I have to say is, if you haven't already, make friends with the caretaker. The site manager, know what you're doing, and then your next one is probably the business manager, because you need to be working in tandem. And as a teacher, you spend a lot of your time in the classroom. You get taught about pastoral roles, the curriculum, the subject, how to talk to parents, etc. But unfortunately, teacher training, maybe it's obvious. I think it is probably. But when you're so busy as a teacher, you miss this, that actually there's a whole school and an estate running around you that needs to be kept going. And I think because I did an eco group after school and I wasn't rushing out of the door or staying in my classroom for that matter, I started to see the cleaners clean up, the caretakers mending things, the admin staff carrying on, sorting all the things out. And slowly but surely you realise where the heartbeat of the school is. It is with the pupils, but there's another one behind. It's often a silent one, unmissed in many schools, celebrated in others. So it's definitely something I would recommend. Reach out to people. And I have to say now that my best allies in school for sustainability are all the support staff, from the cleaners, site supervisors, the kitchens and the admin. And they drive things forward in a way that sometimes teachers don't have the capacity for. And it allows the teachers to shine lights on different areas. So very important indeed. And of course, eventually, when you get to that moment where you become part of the SLT, they're equally as important. And obviously, running things by the boss and knowing what their plans are is a super lesson of knowing and understanding where you are on the curriculum. At first, when you're a young teacher, you don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of what the leadership roles are as well, and talking frankly sometimes and saying, look, I'd like this. Is this happening? And you find out it is. Obviously, they save you from quite a bit of useless information for you as a young teacher trying to get going. But equally, if you know things, it's communication. Talking to people is the best. And I did also learn a lovely trick with the PTA. I joined quite early on because I wanted them to buy me a shed, and learned that very much there's a wealth, another layer of knowledge you can tap into with the parents, grandparents and associates at the school. And they, again, whilst I probably, it would be perceived I spent more of my time helping them to raise money and things like that, they actually helped me grow as a person. And our pupils as well, because they gave a different wealth of experience, and one that I will always hold in all my teaching, that the teacher is great and the teacher is a centre point, but it's the community behind them that drives education and progress and those skills we want for our children, the employability, the soft skills that aren't measured.
Gosh, there's so much in that, Wendy. But yeah, I will say, I think it's great advice for anyone starting out in a teaching career is be nice, make friends with the school keepers, the estate staff, the admin staff, because yeah, these are the people who will help make your life easier or tell you how things work and who to go to. Because there is that thing, isn't it, when you don't know about invoices and purchase orders, and can all be a bit scary.
Absolutely. We used to be in the outside gardening, and then I'd trail the children through with the muddy shoes. Obviously, we cleaned them off, but we didn't clean them off. We never quite cleaned them off. We all know that, especially if your parents. And then I'd realise they'd already cleaned up. So a quick word with the cleaner saying, "Look, can you clean this area last? And then we're not going to come to blows." It's simple things like that, or making sure they know that when they're on the cleaning schedule, which classrooms you're using, so they clean those last, especially if you're possibly gonna make a mess. So having a polytunnel outside made a massive difference because most of the mess stayed outside. It was just feet and footwear. Secondary school children are less keen on putting communal wellies on. So sometimes we stored our own. They had other clothes they changed into, made life more exciting after school. There's different ways around it, but yeah, lots of things like that.
Yeah, it's amazing you have a polytunnel. We'll have to come back to that. But yeah, tell us a bit more about as well some of that sort of practical stuff, like how you worked with the cleaning team, because I think you ended up changing some of their approaches, didn't you?
Oh yes, many years ago we were looking. To be fair, it was eco schools that used to drive a lot of the work, and it also helped if you have something to aim for and some targets to actually achieve. It makes life, and especially if it's an award, schools tend to cooperate a little bit better. So we'd had a problem with our dining room, new equipment, and there was some corrosion, and we couldn't figure out why there was corrosion. And what we did is we actually realised that there was too much bleach being used, and we shouldn't be using it in school. So that's been changed, and now there's no corrosion, and we're okay. So that then leads to different things where we had for a short time a refill station. So the teachers, the aim was to get everybody to be on refills. This was before COVID, so COVID put paid to this, unfortunately. It is ready to be reignited, but we had a lot of things that you've got to sometimes live that. Sometimes it works 1 minute, then it doesn't, and then it works again. There are cycles, and it depends sometimes on staff, school issues, wider problems, sometimes classroom availability, etc. So we had a refill station. So we went from being on board massively to fully being on board, and also benefiting from having cheaper refills on site that we can get rather than what you can get in the supermarket, what you can get online, all these other things. So there's quite a few of the teachers now who use products without parabens in and all the other things, and they feel like they're setting a better example for the children as well. So, certainly in the science labs, when we had soaps out for the children to wash their hands after they'd used chemicals, we made sure they knew where they came from. In fact, the eco group ended up making some from leftover stock from one of the suppliers it was a local business that sold ethical soaps, and they had bits left over. So the children then made their own soaps. So everything felt a little bit more circular. And that's the key thing, that circular economy, even if it's tiny little things like soap, getting those things for the children to realise, well, yes, things can be done like this, because, the schools very much have worked on a very linear economy, in and out. The children are linear. You know what I mean? We bring them in at year 7, leave at year 13, and everything is in a progress, very much like the factory model, isn't it? Everything is churning out. The system is set up like that. It's how we amend the system to look differently and feel differently as well.
Yes, I think the whole thing about the circular economy is really interesting, and we'll put a link in the show notes to a piece that's on the website for those who want to understand a little bit more about that. And so, go back to your refill station. So was that something that all staff, cleaners, teaching staff could purchase from?
Yeah, so we've got a very lucky in the area we are as a Prospects Foundation. It's been around nearly 30 years now, and there was a refill station there. So we mimicked that. We went to see their shop, see how it worked. And then unfortunately the shop closed because obviously it has to be kind of like a business, and it didn't quite make it. So we have the refill station in school now. It's alongside our prom shop, which is basically we had the pre-loved uniform came first. That was literally, it started off looking like a jumble sale and came from our lost property. So when lost property had been left long enough and no one had claimed it, we washed it, cleaned it, sorted it, and put it on for sale or gifting. Luckily, we did a lot of summer events and Christmas events, so there's quite a lot of engagement with the parents. So it gone from a bit of like, you put it away quickly. I got a jumper extra, I got a blazer extra, to now it's gone full circle. We actually have a room. We won a competition actually from Let's Go Zero to refurbish the room. IKEA refurbished a groggy room for us, so we actually have like a shop with an external entrance for the parents so they can open at weekends. The children now just donate their clothes as a matter of habit, so there's no shit. It used to be undercover. Here, miss, you can have a bag of clothes. And now it's quite proud. Everyone will drop them off and children will not worry about visiting because it looks like a shop, and our new parents will frequently stock out their children's equipment. So we're really happy with that. And then it evolved because we have a prom, and then the children are like, well, we're buying these prom dresses, what we're doing with them afterwards. And now we've something like 200 prom dresses and some suits, and that's open for the whole community. So any of the local secondary schools can do that. We do a buy for something like £25, which covers a bit. It was the cleaning costs of anything, and then a hire. So it's ridiculously cheap. We also do evenings where we'll do a little bit of fake fizz with them and music and things like that. So we do really try, and the children do respond well. It's taken a cycle of maybe 10 years to get that. Things don't happen overnight, and that's one thing people need to remember. You've got to be in this for the long haul. And I was looking at the PTA to completely. And obviously the senior management team of the school were open to that because first it did look like a jumble sale. And it wasn't very appealing. It looked like a pile of clothes. And then it's gone on and on. And again, we didn't have any storage space before we had this room. So the caretakers used to wheel. We managed to get some big industrial hanger things, and they used to wheel them round for us to different places. And we used to hide them behind the stage and various things because my school, like most, will have very limited storage space. So again, when you're looking for things like this, it's where do you put it? Ideas are great, but you often can't find a place for it.
That's right, isn't it? It's thinking through all those bits of the process. Having a uniform swap shop is such a valuable thing for people, isn't it? But you say it needs to be accessible, make it look more appealing, have it open at hours that actually work for parents and families too. All these things matter.
Time is crucial, and sorted out. I mean, just having it prepared, sized, and it grows. Things like revision books and equipment are in there as well. Trainers, everything's in there. But every donation which is welcomed has to be sorted, and somebody has to help with that.
I imagine that's volunteers.
It's me after school and anyone I can convince to help me. And now it does run itself because the staff and the PTA have fully got it under control.
Enjoying the podcast? Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. It will help other educators discover us too. Now back to the show.
So it's quite impressive when you see that the parents run this themselves in their own time. They're all working parents as well. This is not an affluent area where we're all sat at home. There's some really, they go out of the way to do this.
And it sounds like too, you mentioned that you won some money. You won a competition, and you've entered other things, haven't you? Done awards, as you say, it can be things to work for.
Yeah.
So I guess those things can be valuable in terms of just getting some money in. But
many reasons. Yeah. So when you like literally, we've done it on no budget, and I can probably categorically say we've brought in nearly £200,000 over the last. All right, it's nearly 20 years now, directly from the eco group and what they've done. So, and a competition gives the children focus, and gives them a reason to do something. Possible prize is always nice. The scenery of sustainability has changed somewhat now. There were few and far between. So I had to be really quite alert on social media and emails and read them and figure out what was going on. There's a bit of a deluge at this moment in time, so it's quite hard to sift things out. But when we started, the children would then, if we could win a competition, it got them a little bit of publicity. They got a photo in the newspaper, or obviously now online, a little bit of recognition from the rest of the staff. And then in a school where the budgets are tight, when you bring in a little bit of money, it's appreciated. So things started to grow like that. And I do recommend that because you can't, a school can't always afford to put some of the things into the things you need. Like one of the things was a shed. Like the shed is kind of like useless in many ways because it's a storage and a dry space. It's not exactly top of your budget when there's other constraints. So things like that make it accessible. And then the PTA, when they fundraise, if they can top it up, it's looking at different avenues. And, sometimes we've been really lucky. I mentioned the polytunnel before. The local First Tunnels literally rang us up and realised we were doing a good job with our children garden and things like that. And they actually put one in for free for us. It's 36 foot. We can get an entire class in. We can get children with a wheelchair in there. We were just super lucky, and that's been going now for 15 years. And you can imagine, we've had it done twice, and it's ready for another repair. Not because it's been vandalised by our children. We had a couple from outside, unfortunately, but it has been loved and well used by many.
That's amazing, isn't it? It sounds like, yeah, because you were gardening, talking about that, showing that. And I don't know if you'd already built the relationship with that supplier, or maybe they saw something and
No, they
approached you
saw something,
directly. Yeah.
on the media, and I think it helped them get into schools as well because we were a great example. So it did help them, I hope, and it certainly helps us massively. And there's a lot of things you can do like that on a small scale because we're a single academy trust as well, so we have no one else to go to other than our primary schools, and we've used that quite a lot because we set an eco-cluster group up. The primary schools meet at least once a term, if not twice. We'd always hosted that, but now as the schools have got more confident in what they do, some of the primary schools host a morning breakfast, and we get it all done before the lesson starts and no covering for implications. It's always been a great time to share ideas with other staff, especially at first when I was pretty much on my own doing this, hearing what other schools were doing, copying, making it, refining it, reinforcing that it's right as well, because this was way before, we were doing our sustainability action plans. The word climate change hadn't even been invented at this point. And I also have to, acknowledge that in the groups that we had, I had teachers who'd been doing this 20 years prior to me. And we only need to look at our own grandparents and think that's how they lived. Frugal life, circular economy was part of their life. And any of our children, families that are to do with the farming world, that carries on now, and it's so second nature to them. So we've got to respect that, and it's nice to sometimes draw on the expertise of the local area and the historical part, because often you'll find, there's some serious experts in the area who are more than willing to help guide you with things.
Yes, I think being rooted in place in your community is just really important, isn't it? And I want to come back to that. But yes, going back to this point about like when you started, it was very much you and it came from your enthusiasms. And then, but how do you sort of make that transition? Because I guess there is a risk, isn't there? If you've got one person in school who's really leading the eco work, but then they leave, does that then carry on? Is it sustainable? So yeah, tell us a bit about how you've maybe built other champions or how it's worked in your school.
So I mentioned the eco-cluster groups. That was the first thing of the support for oneself, if you will. And then the collaboration with the primary schools and the secondary schools eventually. So we're all kind of like in this together. We did a summer fair with our PTA, I mentioned those, and that was a nice activity to get all the schools together. And that escalated into a sustainability learning conference. I had a colleague, Glynis, who I'd met to do some science work many years ago, and she'd been doing something similar. We combined efforts, and we now run the largest sustainability conference for children and adults in the country. And it's 19 years since Glynis started. It will be our 17th joint year this year. And we moved from Glynis's primary school to St Christopher's sixth form. I grew that to Blackburn Rovers Football Club. And there's now several football clubs interested as well. So that in itself, I've been very, very lucky. I've got some very talented colleagues I've worked with. So, for example, we've had a trash and show. So the head of technology has run within the textiles unit the chance for the children to work after school to make outfits. We've had people who've done this from geography departments. Everybody takes part. The caterers help cater for it. So it becomes something that is like an ownership of this. And children want to work for this. Every year, year 9 pupils are the guide, not just from our school, but other secondary schools as well. And it becomes something that's part of the school calendar, and people want to have a part of it. So naturally, as younger teachers who've been part of this become the leaders within the school, they're just taking this on board. And the core estates teams of the school have just carried this on. They just carry it forward. That just goes quite naturally. The problem is the leadership of things. So I was made Director of Sustainability 15 years ago. And that was probably quite a courageous thing from the head teacher to actually admit that, because no one else that I know of, I've not met anyone who's been a director of sustainability for this long. And that gave me some free lessons so I could actually do some extra bits and a TLR. So then you've got to think about career objectives. I wasn't then looking for other jobs. So I managed to rise through school, the school that I put the infrastructure in, if you will, and it's risen with that until, to my associate assistant head role. So it's been acknowledged and championed by the school, and it's just become part of the school. However, that's the problem. I think there needs to be a role for somebody. It needs to be recognised, and it needs to have a TLR. Luckily, I got a governor on side very early on, so we were one of the first people to have a sustainability governor. We're on our second sustainability governor at this moment in time now. First one was for 12 years. So that helped when we wanted to report back to the governors. So sustainability wasn't originally on the governor's report because it wasn't a subject. It didn't, and I don't think it should be a subject either. I think it should just be like we'd report on pastoral, like we report on behaviour. It should be holistic across the school. I think the minute we try and make it a subject, it doesn't fit. It should be part of everything. And that's how we did that. So the governors were interested. They started to see the soft skills, children speaking in Parliament, addressing MEPs when we were part of Europe, doing community work, being visible, getting the children into positions where they're addressing important people from outside of school, having to think about their arguments, articulate this. We've had children who wouldn't speak, and then they're doing leading assemblies in school, assemblies to the peers, which is super difficult, or for older children. We've got sixth formers who've managed to go on win the Diana Award, be part of the Darwin 200 around the world sale that emulates Charles Darwin's passage. We've had some children who've really gone on to do different things that are really important. We've got children now who are teachers as well, who have their own eco groups, which is super. It is super heartwarming to know about that. But it's that confidence, putting them in situations that they wouldn't get in the normal run of a school day. I think it's been very helpful.
Yes. And speaking of going into situations which aren't part of the school day, one of the community projects you've run is a sleep out, isn't it? So tell us a bit about that, or some of the other community projects you've run.
So, the eco group has always been a multi-age group, and the children it attracted were from all different parts of life and academia as well. So everyone was different, but there was never a judgment on anybody. It was a wonderful group, and it's one of my favourite things I've done in school. So the children decided they wanted to help the homeless, and we couldn't quite figure out how. I was, the original wanted to go and see people. Obviously, I was aware of the backgrounds of some of these people, and not probably the ones I'm going to get risk assessments on here. So we had a chat, and what we decided to do was to do a sleep out at school. So of course that created a whole raft of paperwork, and again, brave leadership of school to let us do this as well, because there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong. But then we decided what we're going to do. We're going to raise money. So we did a sponsor the first year, and we also decided that because we had the polytunnel and we were used to growing veg, and we've done various different programs, Pledge for Veg in a soup box. We used to do it with plants in to make a certain soup. We've done lots of different things like that. We decided they'd use that knowledge to do something useful. So the plan was to make some soup and sleep out that night. So we did that, and I had the brainwave because literally we had the technology department again. Helps us. The children wrote some letters for extra veg to make it happen, and we made the soup after school. That's what we did, chopped and things like that. And then the children hadn't noticed that they hadn't actually eaten. So they were getting hungry, but I said, well, sorry, it's too late now. I need to go to bed because it was November, so it was cold and dark. So previously I'd spoken to the PTA, and we're a church school as well. So we had a couple of the curates and vicars who could come along, and the building was so designed that we slept in the courtyard, so we were quite safe. I wasn't too worried about that. And we did have access to a toilet if we needed it. But we were actually outside, and the children did behave. They went to bed. So about 9 o'clock, they were on cardboard, we were in sleeping bags, obviously talking and things like that. We banned mobile phones, which was easier to do then because I think it might be a bit harder at this moment in time. And they were chatting away, and they realised they were hungry, and they're going, this is not nice, we're hungry. So we had a soup kitchen arrive, which was the PTA and the vicar, and the children cried, a lot of them, and because they realised how important that was. To actually have something warm, because it started to get cold, and we had the soup they made. We put some to the side they didn't know about, and some hot chocolate, And it was completely, it was mind-blowing how, that difference in the children, how that happened. And then to be in school the day after, obviously I had a lot of staff, massive staff support, about 7 staff let out, and then we had to teach the day after. And whilst I had ordered a good cooked breakfast for the children in the morning, I said warm toast and cheese and all the other bits in the morning, they were ready. They were like, and they sat in assembly, and they said, well, this is crazy. How can you function? So they've gone from being a bit like, oh, let's help the homeless and be nice and cuddly and we'll do something good, to realising what that meant sleeping out. So we did it biannually then. So the next time we decided that money was tight, so we shouldn't ask for money. So we asked for donations this time, and we made bags of love. The Young Enterprise group took this on as a social enterprise business. It was the first one in the Northwest, and they managed to win through to the finals of the Northwest, well, Lancashire then Northwest with this. And they were a year 10 group. And we made that second year, we made 600 portions of soup for the homeless charities, which we contacted beforehand. We got it a little bit more slick this time. And we donated, I think it was 300 bags of love, which were rucksacks, which were all school donated ones, with a warm coat, and then we sized them. And so we had them, like, say, size 14 ladies, size XL men. So we'd sorted this. So when I said jumble sale before, the science lab had clothes panels so high. It was amazing. Again, really quite an amazing evening. So we did that and made the soups. There's more people. But one of the critical things, I think, stories I learned from that is when we did visit the homeless charity beforehand with some of the older children, say, look, what do you need? Are we doing this right? And they talked about it and they said, we also need something for the dogs. And I pulled a face like, why? I want to feed humans. I'm an animal lover, don't get me wrong, I have my own dogs. Why do we want to feed the dogs? And they said, well, actually, the homeless people only have the dogs, and they're very likely to feed them first. He says, so you see if you can do that. So what we did, again, textiles department, any jumpers that weren't really possible to be passed on, we cut the arms off, made rugs. One of my colleagues was a tennis enthusiast. He got the tennis balls from the club that were already gone, and we got some other bags, and we got some donations of dog food and things like that. And we made dog bags, and that was the clincher. So when the children gave these bags out, we took them to give them out in the minibus, several runs full of the minibus, and difficult carrying them. We took them and people took them off us. And when we gave them bags for the dogs, that was an emotional wreckage there. So overall, but it was lovely. It was really lovely. And some of the children have gone on to do some really massively important things with these kind of people who are vulnerable in society, and have a whole new respects, and listen to some stories that really warm the heart.
That's amazing, isn't it? And I think it's a really important point, isn't it? That listening, actually going and asking, what do you actually need? How can we actually help? Rather than making assumptions. And the impacts for the young people isn't necessarily, oh, we've raised some money or we've done something good, but yeah, it actually has changed some attitudes and understanding, and given a new an empathy.
Yeah, we're not children. Children obviously they're very self-centered as they grow up. It's to life. They're meant to be as young teenagers, and then obviously the empathy comes later. But it was fantastic to see, and the Duke of Edinburgh, the children volunteer. So it's all about entwining everything in school. And everybody who does something extra, it brings it together, and it did build a massive sense of community there. And so they're looking to do this again this next year now. So fingers crossed it goes ahead, especially without me there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Anyway.
Yes, that's right. Because the other part of your life is now as head of education for Solar for Schools. So yeah, give us a quick insight for schools that are considering solar or want to know a little bit about it. What top tips would you give? Things to do, things to avoid?
Well, the first tip would be to get your governors on board. Because I think I spent about 8 years trying to get it in our school. And what I hadn't realised is our chair of governors, despite having an eco governor, was a surveyor, and he'd come across all the problems with the solar roof. So every time solar's measured, he was like, no. And what I did eventually was connect him with the head of engineering from Solar for Schools, actually the conference, and he signed the day after because he understood it properly. And he was rightly protective of the school roof, because there had been people who were probably considered cowboys, if you will, leaving schools with leaky roofs. Well, I think the first thing the advice I would say is read it properly, find out what this is about, what you're getting into with schools. How are you going to either fund it, if you're going to fund it yourselves, or with something like the Solar for Schools Community Benefit Society, or there are other funding streams. And then to actually think about the benefits. So one of the things that I've mentioned with the estates and the buildings, I always feel there's a lot to learn in schools from the building itself. The building is an educational tool that is completely missed in most cases. Hence my role at Soul for Schools. So Soul for Schools believe that it's all about education. So before the solar panels are installed, so once it's agreed at the right levels in school that solar is the way forward, which in most cases it's a no-brainer because we use the buildings during the day when it's sunny. Schools are absolutely set up for solar and wind and things like that. It's just the other renewable technology aren't as viable. So they've agreed on solar. Then getting the children to think about why should we pick solar for a start off? What are the advantages, disadvantages, and go through that. There are disadvantages. We know that the first recycling factory in England has only just been set up. We visited that, and that's part of our lessons that we will bring forward. But children knowing that actually you have to think about that circular economy again. It's not just put them on the roof and that's what you do. They need maintaining, they need checking. But going through with the children like, right, okay, which roof do we need it? Why do we need it? Understanding seasonality. So the children of the eco group had a bit more idea of the seasonality with the sun and obviously photosynthesis and the warmth. Obviously, everyone knows that, but we forget about the obvious. Knowing that in winter we're not going to produce as much energy because the sun and the sky, so that leads nicely to science and the tilt of the earth, etc. Bringing it all in and making everything line up. The design of it, so they get the children to design them. So we've got an app where the children can use what the designers use, but a slightly less powerful tool. And then it can predict how much energy they can get. And then going through your physics, certainly for Key Stage 3 physics or some of the Key Stage 2 for primary school, you can then look at appliances and look how much they cost. A kilowatt hour is really hard to understand from a child, and to be fair, many adults remember it was like one line on the physics syllabus, and maybe it was brushed over when we were at school as well. So having adults understand the energy bills as well. So there's lots of learning points before it's even installed. And then actually the installation itself. These are green careers. These are people whose jobs didn't exist 10 years ago. My mantra is we are teaching children for jobs that don't exist. And we can't even imagine some of the jobs, dream them. Like AI, where would that never even entered my dreams at any point or thoughts. These is an opportunity to say, well, actually, there are jobs that are outside. I might be able to do something that's different every day, working with different people, because the children have seen very much things like the option of going to university and hopefully getting a professional job. If not, you've got your supermarkets or you're at a computer. This doesn't always float everybody's boat. A lot of children want to be outside and want to do things. They want something a little bit more manual as well, not sat down. There's various aspects. So we always introduce them to the installers. They'll do an assembly or a talk. The engineers will do if the school wants to. And then it's followed up with an education team where we actually do drill down into the curriculum. So as children do energy audits, they're part of this. They can see which part of the school where the sunshine is. You can talk about, then we can talk about how the school's heated as well. There's various things that can spin off this. In fact, there's thousands of things that can spin off this. We've had children who have gone on to do architecture because they've been using the app and understanding some different things, and it really prompted an interest in building and design. So, using what we've got and just opening our eyes, very much like we do in nature, or we don't do maybe. When we go outside, take a look at what there is there and getting children to reconnect. I spent many times on the school field doing quadrats and then actually just saying, right, we're going to have 10 minutes and just going to look at the grass. Oh, it's grass. There's nothing there, miss. We'll go and let's have a look a bit closer. And before you know it, they've spotted something. There may be a worm's moved or an insect, or the fact they've noticed there's different types of grass, and you've got your vetch, you've got your clover. And something that sounded dismally boring has now become something that's slightly different. And we forget, it's just reconnecting. Our grandparents, great-grandparents probably were much more reconnected. They knew the bird sounds. They knew identify the trees without problem. They knew the little tips to make you better with various herbs, which we seem to be losing very quickly.
I guess actually technology is quite helpful again now in this, isn't it? Because there are apps and things we can use.
So, it's helped me as well because as a teacher, there's, my degree is actually physiology, which is nothing really to do with this. And it's all been a self-learning. And I think maybe as a teacher, you do have a passion to learn, don't you, yourself? And if you can learn and be passionate about that, the children can be passionate about their learning as well. So I feel very much self-taught, whether it's correct or not. I'm open for discussion, but I always feel like I learn something new every day with things. So I like to keep that going.
Brilliant. Thank you, Wendy. You've given us so much to think about and unpick. Let's just finish by tell us about, is there anything you've been reading or listening to recently you'd recommend to people?
Yeah, well, sometimes I am in the car traveling to different schools or on the train. So I do often put podcasts on. I do listen to quite a lot of the alternative media as well. So sometimes radio broadcasts and things like that, because I always like to hear what's going on from different points of view. I think my favourite book at this moment in time is Jean Earle, The Clan of the Cave Bear, which is the Earth Children series. I don't know if you've been aware of that. But I think these are books from like 1980s, something like that. It's actually an American lady who looks at how maybe what we think of as the cavemen lived and how they went through different processes and looked at nature, but obviously within a story. So it's fiction, but it's got a lot of facts in there. I like things like that, so that just to hide into disappear into a different world sometimes.
Yes, definitely. And then, yes, you say, and then also gives you that chance to learn and become more curious and connect things. Thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing so much with us today. And I feel like we've come back for several more podcasts, so maybe we can catch up another time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Liz. I appreciate it.